Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, breadwinners, thread spinners, and all those in between, you're now watching the TNF podcast with your favorite bipolar rock and roller, Mr. J. Curtis Strickland. Do me a favor, click on that subscribe button, click on the little bell for notifications, like this video, comment on this video, and please share this video. It will help me greatly in the algorithm. Want to list some of the upcoming shows that we have? We've got on the 3rd of April, Alex Elkin. He's a comedian from Los Angeles. That's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Hoya from Madball, Scarhead, Smoke AD is going to be on the 7th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Joe Mustin and Johnny Smerdell from Advent and Beloved is going to be on the 14th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Scott Vogel from Terror, Buried Alive, Despair, 21st of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Tim McMahon from Mouthpiece and Hands Tied on the 28th of April at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Don Foose from Spud Monsters, Run Devil Run, One Life All In is coming back to the show. It's going to be on the 5th of May, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. And we've got Carl Severson from Nora, Ferret Records, and Good Fight Entertainment on the 19th of May at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we've also got official merchandise at hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. We've got Bella Canvas t-shirts that are 50% polyester, 25% cotton, 25% rayon. They feel like a dream. All right. So my next guest has been a longtime friend of mine. He has been a vocalist for a lot of the Cleveland area bands, specifically Outcry, North Meadow Park, and now he's based in Charleston, South Carolina with the band Circle Back. Ladies and gentlemen, John Marino, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? It's good to see you. It's been a
It's good to
while.
see
I'm
you,
so
man.
happy to be here. You don't even
I-
understand. It's
I'm
funny
glad to
that you
have you,
were
man.
it's funny that you were listing off like all these like luminaries and dignitaries that are coming on the show. And it's like, yeah, we've got John Marino today. So hate to let
You're a
everybody
legend,
down,
man.
but I think we're gonna have a good time today. So don't worry.
Yeah, man, definitely. You got the brick wall background going
That's right.
on. Fucking tough, man. I love
I
it.
was gonna the real background, I think, is a bed and like a dresser, and I think a few flamingo things that are on the wall. So
See,
I
like
gotta make it
mine's
as
not
tough
so
as
great
possible.
either. Yeah, mine's not so great either because I've been in the process of relocating. So, but if I put it against the green screen, the mic disappears for some reason. Don't ask
I
me
got
why.
you.
So it looks like shit. But yeah, man, really great to have you here. I hope you brought your best stripper DJ voice.
Absolutely. Of course I did.
Let's hear it.
All right. Coming to the stage, gentlemen, Diamond.
Diamonds.
Hello. Hello.
Mercedes.
Mercedes.
Lexus.
Oh man.
They always got to have fancy
Did I ever
car names or something.
did I ever tell you that I did that one day? That I had
You
the
did.
opportunity to actually go and do that one time. A friend of mine, I was going to school for broadcast, television, and radio. That's what I
Yeah.
originally went to school for. But I knew a guy that did that for like extra money on the side, and
Uh,
he couldn't. He needed to fill in for one night. He's like, "Hey, it's real easy." At the time, it was like CD players, and he's like, "All you got to do, the girls have like a list of songs that they want. All the CDs are ready. You just put them in like the 10 disc changer, and then you'll be all set. But all you have to do is, just introduce them real quick. You don't have to get ridiculous with it, but to introduce them and maybe the song, and you should be good to go, and they'll tip you out at the end of the night." I gotta say, of all the things that I've done, that's probably one of the most unique experiences of my life. But it was cool though.
certainly, man. Well, working the door there and sometimes working the floor, it was always interesting to hear. Sometimes the manager would get up there and do it, sometimes the DJ, and they were really good at it. Like I was
Yeah.
like, man, these guys could be on radio, like
Oh,
it
absolutely.
was amazing. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and then the
So
one guy that ended up doing it, he ended up having a long career in radio, so it makes
no
sense.
way.
I had my little bit in radio, but not to the extent of that gentleman. So it was a cool experience.
I always wanted to do it, man. I actually, and you know what? Like, I envied the girls that worked at the club because, I actually, they're like, see if you can climb that pole. And I did it. And I was like, holy shit, this is hard. You need like a lot of upper body strength,
Yeah, yeah.
And to
I
do
couldn't
that
get
all
halfway up the
night,
thing
it's
right
just
now.
like crazy,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, man. But so all right, the first question I usually ask my guests typically is, you're from a music background, you're a vocalist for a band. How did you kind of get into music? Did you have like a musical family? Did you have friends, or did you have siblings that played music? What was your first kind of foray into the music world?
Yeah, that's a great question. My father is a classically trained pianist, so I grew up in. I don't know if it's to say it's the classical music scene in Cleveland, but I think it's the type of music that I grew up on. It wasn't really like pop hits or anything at the time. My dad was like real into classical music and of the great composers, things like that. So that was my real first introduction into music itself, short of anything that I would hear on the radio, of course, in time. But um, to this day, I still have a really nice appreciation for classical music. And on top of it, a couple years ago, I thought it was a real cool thing that my dad finally put out like a CD or like an album on. It's out on Bandcamp, as a matter of fact, of him playing piano. So real stoked on that. I think it was just one of those things that it took forever, and then he finally put it out. He was a doctor by day, but I think he really wanted to be a musician at the end. So I kind of got the musical, taste buds from him, but specifically in classical music in the beginning.
That's awesome, man. Did you ever train on the piano at all?
Listen, man, I tried to play violin in like sixth grade, and I just didn't want to practice. So I would take it home. I was like, oh, well, I'd rather just go play sports or go play baseball or soccer or something like that. And that was short lived. And to this day, I got to be honest with you, I can't play an instrument to save my life. That's why being in these bands and being a vocalist, I am like the least important person of the band, because I know what it takes to go in and write all of these songs and riffs, and then of course we get together and we have to talk about it, and okay, we like this, we get rid of that, and there's a lot of collaboration, but I couldn't even like comprehend how to like even make my fingers work for any of those things. And believe me, I've tried. I think I'm just too fat fingered. So I'm at about to be 43, so I know where to stay in my lane and stay in the pocket. So
Sure.
I just kind of yell and scream for fun and make weird faces, and people laugh at me, and they end up
Play that
streaming my records
tambourine,
and stuff.
man.
That's right. There's a whole story behind that too. It's funny, like,
Okay, well, we got to hear it eventually.
all right. So Circle Back is always on the road, and it's a good thing. I'm very happy and blessed to be in a band where we can travel quite frequently, and it's awesome. But once we are going from like town to town, or even if we're playing like a state away and have to come back at the end of the night after the show, the last thing I want to hear is like Earth Crisis or like any
Right.
band that's going to be yelling and screaming, because
Of
it's about
course.
3:30 in the morning. I'm driving, and I just don't want to hear it. I think I've been yelled at all
Yeah, you
night.
heard it all night.
Correct. So we're sitting in there. I think the way it works is usually Nathan's in the back, completely passed out. Um, Jared would be sleeping. Robert would probably be passed up, but Richard and I drive, and he's with me in the front of the van. So we usually play like 90s pop rock just to kind of keep us awake. It's stuff that we can sing along to.
Sure.
We grew up on. I think the Gin Blossoms were playing. And there was one part that had the tambourine, and I was just like being stupid, like, hey, yeah, like doing like the like clapping along with it. And he's like, I'm gonna get you a tambourine. Next thing I know, the next practice, tambourine showed up, and I was like, all right, should I take it to a show? And then we started doing it at all of our shows, and it's just become a thing where it literally comes out of nowhere. I bang it a few times. I look at people's faces as they're laughing at me, and it's one thing to show that you can have some fun playing hardcore. So
Yeah. Well,
that's
and
where the
it's unique
tambourine thing came
too.
from. Yeah, it's stupid, it's goofy,
It's
people
it's
like it.
something different, you know. I remember watching that video of you guys on Hate 56, and you bust out the tambourine, and
Right,
I started laughing too. I was like, but at the same time it fits the music, and
right.
it's not like not crazy or anything, it's just fun and it's different, so I applaud you for that.
It's the extent of my musical talent.
More tambourine, more
That's right.
tambourine.
That's right.
Uh, Christopher Walken's got to get in there and give you some motivation.
That's
Now,
right.
now, um, like with hardcore and punk rock and metal, how did you kind of get involved in that scene? Was it through friends, siblings? You heard something?
Yeah, no, it was actually interesting. I got into it through the local church that my family was going to. So I just happened to be, it was like one of those places, right place, right time. And it's weird because it's like a church thing. But all that aside, there was like an event there for like the young kids, like the youth, and there was a band that was playing, and I was like, all right, well, cool, like, I want to see some live music, and I, to the extent of my music, what I liked at the time was probably like Live and Weezer's first album and things like that.
Sure.
Maybe Alice in Chains or whatever. This was 93, 94 ish. And I think maybe
Mhm.
94 going into 95 was exactly when this happened. But I go into the room as this band was setting up, and all I start hearing is this guy on his guitar, and he must have been just doing a sound check or trying to get levels for himself. He starts doing these like chugs on this guitar, and it's just like, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, what is this? Why is this like the most beautiful sound I have ever heard in my entire life? So I'm sitting there completely in awe as this guy's doing. His back's turned to me. He has no idea that this is happening, but he's like doing these chugs, and I'm like, literally, like my life is changing, like right, right here, right now, in that moment.
Wow.
They go on to the stage, and the guy, so they get everything ready. People start showing up, um, and then the singer comes up and he goes, "Hey, we're Disciple from Erie, PA." And then I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Okay." And they had just changed their name from Mothership to Disciple, and of course, as you know, Ex Disciple X, Ex Disciple XAD,
Ex Disciple
the whole,
XAD.
yeah,
Yeah.
the whole string of names they had to go through to avoid, any legal confrontations, things like that. But it just so happened that that was the band, that was the moment, and I can remember it. I'm telling you this to this day. I can remember that feeling when I heard that the first time. It was something like unlike anything I've ever heard in my entire life. And once I heard that, I knew that I need to be involved in this in some way, or this is something that is going to change my life. And here I am, what, almost 30 years later, still listening to the same stuff or
Still a
trying to get
lifer.
into the new bands. It was literally life changing. So that happened. And then there was a fast follow, I think maybe a month later, just because in Cleveland, like all these bands would roll through. It's a perfect place to be, in the mid to late 90s, just because like all of the victory bands would come through and all of that. Of course, I branched out after that first show, but Zayo was right down the road. They would be playing all the time, and we would be playing with them once I eventually started a band. So it was just a good time to be alive and a good place to be, on top of all like the amazing Cleveland bands that we had: Integrity, Ringworm, Ascension, my
Yeah.
goodness. So just tons of good things going on at that time. But that moment I'll never forget. It was like the first time I heard it, and it literally changed my life.
Yeah, man. That's a crazy show to be able to, witness, because that
Wild.
that band was awesome. That band was, so, and kind of unconventional for the, I guess, kind of the hardcore scene at the time, because I guess a lot of that spirit filled hardcore was going on then, but, kind of eventually, petered out a little bit. And, I can relate to that too. I have a much similar experience in that, one of my friends kind of turned me on to it. I'd been listening to punk rock and Rage Against the Machine and stuff like that, but it was like, it was one of those things where it's such a strong juxtaposition, like heavy music with spirituality, specifically Christianity, because, that's, as some would say, that's the devil's music or
Right.
whatever, but that's really kind of what attracted me to it, was that it was such an oddity. It was such a like niche thing. And it was like, one of these things is not like the
Right.
other, like where you where you're just like heavy metal Christian music, hardcore Christian music. How does this work? And then you delve into it further, and they're like, oh, these lyrics are really inspiring, and they're very passionate about their faiths and their beliefs. So yeah, that totally makes sense that someone would be transformed by that.
Yeah, and I came from a pretty religious background. You have to understand too, during the '90s, there was a lot of religious fundamentalism out there, especially Christian families, where you everything is the devil's work and all that, like you just said. So,
Focus on the
um,
family. Yeah.
so being able to see or hear something that would be within what I was technically allowed to listen to from my parents, and it being heavy or something that wasn't really mainstream, kind of was the attraction first. But it was one of those things. It was like, okay, well, that's great. The lyrics are good, for what they are, and then once you get into that scene, then you start understanding that there are other topics and things that are brought up by other bands, and that's how I started getting into, of course, like Earth Crisis and the message that they had, and Voice That's Fire, and seeing all the bands just around that time that really you know were super inspirational to me. Of course, we ran down the whole Victory Records catalog in the 90s, which was everybody's go-to. But there were a lot of different bands and a lot of things that were coming up at that time that were super inspirational. I think it's interesting now. I don't think kids have the attention span to be able to get preached at, for the most part, by whether it's like a political message or something like that from a band now than it is back in the day. It's even interesting to see that set lists for bands too have not have been significantly cut down. I think back in the day we would do 30-45 minute sets. Now it's like 20 minutes and you're done. I think
Yeah.
it's on to the next. Give me a small bit, but give me your best bit. And that's probably the best way to go around it, to be quite honest.
Sure. And now we're older, where it's like, oh man, the show's going to 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm sitting here taking ibuprofen, trying to stay upright.
Well, and it's crazy too, because a lot of those shows, some of those shows would go on till like 1 or 2 in the morning, and
Yeah,
then it's like, the sound guy wants to go home, the club venue owner wants to go home, everybody wants to go home, and it's like, I don't know if you remember a lot of these eras when it would be like everybody would throw a fest, and it would be like, it wouldn't be like a fest. It would just be like all the local bands and maybe some like out of town headliners, and that would go on like all day. And it's like, it's tedious, where it's just like, bring like three or four good bands, have them do their best material, their like punchiest stuff, and then get gone. And then maybe, go hang out afterwards at Waffle House or something,
yeah.
where it's
And I
like,
think I think for us at that time it was like I think it was Denny's and a few other places. It escapes me now. Some local places in Cleveland, I know we would go after, especially in Lakewood for food and things like that. But I know, like the whole Denny's after, it would be Waffle House from where you're from at the time.
we got Denny's
Post
too.
post hangout, post show hangout um,
Yeah.
would definitely be the way to go. But you're right. It still happens though. You may be right. I think give me your best and give it to me in a condensed package. But there's still promoters and people out there that love to do, like the eight show, things like that, which I think now being in a band is kind of tedious, but I can still understand, a time and a place for certain fests. And it's funny if you go back in time, like even if you look at like some of like the old like Detroit fests or Clevo fests that were put on back in the day, it's funny that a bunch of small time bands at that time, but you could probably charge $300 to get into there to see all those bands now, just for the fact that all of them are like cult classic bands and things
Mhm.
now. You got all these like mixed genre shows that we would have in the 90s that you probably couldn't get away with today, just because of just the differences in people. I would venture to guess.
Yeah, there were always some like weird, like you could see, uh, you know, Hate Breed and Catch 22 and then like Hot Water Music on the same
Right.
bill, what happened to that,
That's true. I think some people are trying to bring that back, but I think it's unless it's just like not like a furnace fest or situation where you can kind of get all of that together and it kind of makes sense. It's pretty tough to do, but I can't discount some of the promoters that are out there that are doing a pretty good job to kind of bring all of these worlds together. And I think that's one way to kind of bring everybody together and keep this thing going. I think honestly, the biggest thing for hardcore over the past couple years had to have been when everybody was home in 2020. Um, people had some time to kind of sit around, share some music with each other because you weren't doing anything. And this whole new scene and group of people came out of the not out of the closet, but just came out of the woodwork, literally after the whole COVID period ended. So it was interesting to see all of the new people that have shown up to shows, and all the new people that are really super interested, especially in South Carolina. There are certain areas where we used to play, specifically in like Greenville, South Carolina, it used to be relatively dead when we play there. Now it's like the place to be. So a lot of good people, a lot of younger kids that are stepping up and are booking shows and doing a really, really good job of getting their friends into it. And then a bunch of people starting a bunch of good bands. And I think that's probably one of the most positive things that came out of a relatively negative experience for the world.
No doubt, man. No doubt. Now let's talk about, how you started playing in hardcore bands.
Yeah,
Was Outcry your first like official band, or did you have
it
any bands
was.
before that? It
No, that
was.
was it. Yeah, Outcry was the
Okay.
first band. So Outcry was what, late 97, 98 into 99. Started off with Dan Pelletier, my nearest and dearest friend from Cleveland, who plays in Symphony in Peril now. But him and I kind of started off with a couple guys that we knew from our area. A few of them kind of like went to church with us. I knew Danny through his family as well, and it was just cool that we kind of got that together, and we were just kind of figuring it out as we went. He was in a band like prior to that called Gadfly, which ended up becoming North Meadow Park in time. But being able to play in a band and being able to, I remember my first practice, like, how am I going to scream? How am I going to sound like? What's it going to be like? It was really kind of nerve wracking. It's funny to think about it now, but it's one of those things that are in your head whenever you were, trying to figure out what you wanted to do. And of course, I think I just ended up pretty much ripping off Dan from Zayo, but I think everybody else was doing that at the time.
Yeah,
So I don't
that's
feel
pretty
too
common.
horrible about it now. But, I think I've come into my own voice um, over the years. And right now, I think I'm probably the most comfortable I've been, within my own voice itself.
It's awesome, man. And so did you guys hit the road? Like, did you guys play
Yeah, well,
nationally?
Outcry was like we played Cornerstone. We played, as many shows as possible. It was really, we played a ton with Zayo, to be honest, which is great for us. We played with Chimera, all kinds of bands, but I think we played right around kind of like Great Lakes area, to be quite honest. Like we went up to New York. Um, I think we played in Pennsylvania. We played a bunch in Ohio. We really didn't venture out too much because it was a relatively short-lived band. But I think it was just one of those bands that, because of the EP and the 7-inch that we put out, the legacy kind of carried on. And for those that went into that like second wave, or like the more underground of those spirit-filled hardcore bands at the time, kind of liked us and enjoyed what we were doing, and that was really it. But it was relatively short-lived, and then I moved right into North Meadow Park, and then that was kind of a just a overall good time. It was different style of music, a little bit more aggressive, no religious undertones or anything like that. It was more of a in your face, kind of like Dillinger Escape Plan meets Dead Guy, just wild and crazy things with a little bit of jazz influence mixed in. So
Where does
we
the
tried to
name
be as
come
weird
from?
as possible.
Where does the name North Meadow Park come from?
North Meadow Park was a street in Walton Hills, Ohio. That was where our
Okay.
drummer Chris used to live, and I think the original band Gadfly used to practice on that street. Um, I'm sure Danny can confirm that, but that would be how that started off. But I think it's just such a cool name, and it was such a weird band. I mean, we had djembe on the stage, we had keyboards. It was wild. We had chimes, like anything that you could think that was just like the Mr. Bungle of hardcore was probably what we were doing. And
Cool.
it was just different and unique. And people liked it. I just wish that band could have been able to stay around a little bit longer as well. But it was definitely a good time.
It's awesome. And you mentioned Chimera. You
Yeah,
played on a Chimera record.
I
You
did.
guessed it on there. And I thought
I
that was
did.
a joke. I was like,
No.
they were like, John Marino's on a Chimera record, and I was like,
Yeah,
really? And
right.
then I hit you up and you were like, yeah, I am. And I was like, oh, wow. How did that? I mean, obviously you played with them, but like,
Mhm.
what? They just asked you to be on the album? How did that work?
Yeah, we had a great relationship with those guys. I mean, going back to even like the skip line days before Camara, and they were just awesome, awesome guys. And it was one of those things that Outcry played, a few shows with them. We developed a relationship. We were in the kind of same, of course, the same scene with each other. But um, Mark was nice enough to be like, hey, we're going to record this EP. It's This Present Darkness EP. Would you like to kind of do some background vocals? I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So we went to Spider Studios where Outcry actually recorded. That's where Zayo did like Flight. Yeah, bunch of bands did a bunch of stuff with Ben Schiggel there. But the good thing is I was able to go there. Danny was with me as well. And we did background vocals for Silence. And I'm right there in the liner notes. It was fun. I just screamed Silence a couple times and that was it. But, it's now, etched into stone now. So people come back and like, is that you that was on it? Yep, that was me. So it's cool though, but that band went on to do so many good things, well past that
Yeah, they blew
EP. And
up.
oh, yeah, and I hope, I know they come back and they've done most recently like their holiday show, but it would be nice if they would kind of carry that forward. I don't know what their plans are, but hopefully they'll be able to do some stuff out of that. I think there's another band that will be branching off um, from that. I think Jason Hagar is doing something right now as we're trying to revive one of his old bands. So be on the lookout for that.
They were in a band before that, and I vaguely remember the name. Was it oh, I can't remember. But one of my buddies, Joe Bando, came on this show, and he's friends with a guy named Jim LaMarca. I think he
Oh,
played in Chimera at one point.
yeah, yeah, Jim. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. Jim definitely played in Khmer for quite a period of time. Really nice guy, very good family as well. I'm trying to think of what other band they were in some rock bands too, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to speak out of school on this one, so I'd have to go back and do a little bit of research on that. But I do think the one band I know that came out of that Strongsville area was Skip Line, and then Camara, and then oh, Years of Fire was a band that came out of that as well. That was kind of like post Ascension, um,
Ascension,
and
that was the band. Yeah.
well, Ascension, yeah, that is. I think that's near and dear to my heart. I think if I ever were to emulate another singer, it would be Chris Wood for sure. I think he was my all-time favorite performer. I've never seen a band hype me up live more than that band. So that's one band that I would pay a lot of hard-earned money to see again at some point if they ever made the decision to play. Just because of I feel if anybody needs to see a band or needs to see a metalcore band, that would be the band they need to see for sure.
Mm, okay. And Cleveland had a pretty awesome scene all around. I mean, like
Absolutely.
we were mentioning, Ringworm, Integrity,
Mm-hmm.
One Life Crew,
Yep. Yep.
Apartment 213.
213. Yep.
Um, who are some other ones that were really kind of making waves in the
Yeah.
scene at the time?
Yeah. Those are definitely, some really good bands. Of course, One Life Crew, was out there, being One Life Crew. We had Committed. That was another great band. My friend Casey sang for that band. Grudge Match. Um, oh, Gordon Soley motherfuckers.
Gordon Soley
Y-
motherfuckers. I've heard of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yep. So that was like the Tony Erba, like, you know, tree of bands, I think. Nine Shocks, Gordon Soley, oh geez, Face Value, all the other bands that kind of came out of that era. So Cleveland had a lot of things going on top of, all of like the metal bands that were being out at that time, like Nun Slaughter and like all the bands that
Hendrix,
like Jim Kanye did, like Schnauzer and like all those
Schnauzer. Yeah.
bands. And that's not even like those were just like the underground bands. But then we also had, of course, Mushroom Head, who was probably the biggest of the
Mhm.
quote heavy bands at the time. It was interesting
I
though.
heard
It's
that Hatrix too as well.
true, right? And that
Yeah.
that also is part of like the Mushroom Head like tree. But it's funny though because in the '90s it was definitely interesting because you had like a whole subset of people that liked Mushroom Head, then you had a whole subset of people that liked hardcore. So like I don't think those two groups really overlap too much at the time. But it's
Mm.
funny now that there's a lot of kids that get into hardcore or have gotten into hardcore through new metal, which is, kind of like system, metal that we
System
didn't
of a
like in the
Down, yeah.
90s, system metal that we didn't like in the 90s because we thought it was like, it's corporate, man. You shouldn't like that,
Easy, yeah.
So, but it's interesting now that like, kids that are like into metalcore and stuff like that now are going to, rocking like corn shirts and things like that when we thought it was like the corniest thing, literally the corniest thing in the world.
Corniest
Um,
thing, yeah.
yeah, whenever we're sit around with our, Snapcase shirts on. So, it's
Sure.
just funny. It's funny to see how things have changed over the past 30 years.
And System of a Down is not really my kind of jam or whatever, but I got to see them live in Japan and they're tight musicians, man. They are on point as far as their
Oh yeah.
technical abilities are concerned.
Yeah, and those are pros, and all of those bands that made it really big during that time, although they were like considered corporate rock in our mindset, were of course talented musicians, and when you can devote your life to it and make it your job, those bands are as tight as can be. It's even like seeing, and I don't want to draw the comparison to Hatebreed, but even seeing Hatebreed recently, you can tell that like they are like pros, pros, pros. Everything is like perfect.
Machines, man.
It sounds perfect every time. You will not get a
Yep.
bad show out of them. It is just like the level of commitment that these bands put out there, and I have nothing but love and support for that for sure.
Definitely, definitely. Now, let's talk a little bit about Circle Back. So,
Yeah.
you ended up relocating to Charleston, and that when what time did the band start?
So the initial Circle Back songs were written in 2013. So we're just over our 10-year mark right now, which is really cool. But
Awesome.
it was one of those things that I went home to Cleveland, and of course, I spend time with Dan every time I go back to Cleveland, and it's really we just talk about music or hang out. And he's got a studio at his house. He's like, hey, let's write a couple songs for like a tough guy hardcore band or something like that we've always talked about doing. And we ended up just having fun one night and did that. And that was like the initial two songs that started off Circle Back. So song Will to Live and Promise to Pay were like the first two. And then it sounded cool. I liked it. I wanted to write some lyrics to it. We ended up writing, what, five more songs, made it a seven-song, like just over an EP, I guess that would you consider a seven-song.
Sure.
And then I liked it enough that I wanted to start recruiting people and get people involved in it. And that's where, Cutler and Nathan kind of got involved in the very beginning when we are starting to build out like a live band scenario. And, since then, put out multiple albums, nice labels are nice enough to put them out as well. Most recently, the one that came out on Blasphemer, The Gift of Time, that EP. So really excited that, it's been distributed worldwide and people have the chance to listen to it. It always surprises me every day when I look at like the Spotify stats, whether they're, 1,000 people listening to it or one person listening to it. It's just nice to know that someone is out there like enjoying a piece of art that, my friends and I created.
Yeah, and it's crazy when you can have that longevity to be able to put out multiple albums. I mean, I remember so many projects I did where it was just like there wasn't that dedication and discipline, and like just kind of young kids figuring things out. And, you might do an EP, you might do an EP and an album, but it was never something that was consistent, and I really applaud you for being able to do that because, especially when you get older, it's difficult to kind of maintain, the integrity, quote, pun intended,
Right.
of like a band to be able to, you know, uh, be consistent and do that, just over a span of time.
No, I totally agree with that. And what you have to understand too is, and this, but for people that may not understand this, you have to have a lot of grace whenever you're in a band. Things you're working with multiple people, multiple personalities. You have to know, what to take to heart, what situations to maybe just be like, okay, that's fine. Know when to give in, know when to negotiate, know when to, kind of because if you're too much of like a dick, then these bands really don't work out after a period of time. So
Mhm.
it's really everybody working together as well as they can within the confines that they can. If everybody knows kind of what their role is and what they can bring to the table, and if you have honest collaborative sessions, and things will be fine. Circle back for an example, we've been through a ton of members, and it's just how life goes. Sometimes people, move out of state, or it's just not for them, or maybe it's a situation where, probably shouldn't be in the band anymore. It's okay. It's a matter of how you move past that, and how you can learn from that. It's not like the world is over if somebody leaves or something like that. It's how you pick up the pieces and kind of move on. As long as you have that that stable group of people, or at least you have some sort of stability in the background, to be able to you know wade through the murky waters, then you'll be fine. It's really with anything, it's more of a life lesson than anything else. It's how can you handle adversity, how can you get through, you know um, you know how do you handle like success, and then also how do you handle times where you don't think that you're doing as well as you probably should be doing. It's interesting because there are times, self-admittedly, with Circle Back, I'm like, man, like we've been doing this for so long, and it doesn't seem like anybody cares, but we're still going to do it because this is what we like to do. And who are you making the music for? Is it for yourself? Is it for others? And then you're really like thinking about how music is supposed to be. Okay, it's an entertainment. This is literally to make people dance. This is what music has been for since really the dawn of time. But how does this fit into, if you're trying to get a point across socially, or is it something where you just like gonna put together like a crazy, you know, I don't know, breakdown record, and just help people just beat the shit out of each other the whole time? It really
Sure.
it really depends on on what you're trying to do. And the good thing with Circle Back, I've noticed, and I'm proud to say that all of our songs are kind of unique in a sense. There's a lot of bands where it's like you listen to like their entire catalog, it's all literally one big song, with a few different riffs here and there.
Yeah.
I like being able to have a little bit of flexibility to, this one's more of a metal song, or this one's more of a hardcore song, and this one's more, whatever it happens to be. This one has maybe a little bit more of a melodic flair to it, instead of just the same thing over and over and over again. And I think that's one thing that allows Circle Back to kind of have some, long standing sustainability, I would guess,
Sure.
because you never know what you're going to get. And album to album, it will have a different sound, overall. Of course, not completely changing genre or anything like that, but I'm
Sure.
proud of that for sure.
And I've noticed that you know, as Nathan has become more technically proficient, which, he's putting out those videos and stuff on YouTube, and man, he is way beyond what he came from, like he has a real knack for music, and he's just gotten like technically better and better. And I've noticed that with that, your sound kind of does like slight variations and shifts almost every time.
And that's true, and that's a testament to Nathan and how hard he works every day. I think he spends like the majority of his time when he's not playing Final Fantasy somewhere, but he's like on his guitar doing something somewhere, sending riffs, ideas that are coming across his head. And then if he isn't doing that, then he's doing, of course, like his either bass or guitar covers, or annoying his wife by playing something for her. I'm sure that's an interesting situation at home, because he's like obsessed to the point. But that's always a good thing for us, so
Yeah.
um with how hard he works. And again, it's not only him, it's everybody else, the work that Robert puts in, the Richard, and everybody else in the band. They do such a good job, and they're so talented that you're right. With more, with more dedication comes better product at the end. So hopefully I can do the same thing with my vocals.
Ah, your vocals are getting fucking sick, man. Like you just like
Appreciate
you
that.
got a real like, I noticed too that, a lot of people, to harken back to what we were talking about with Zayo,
Mhm.
they kind of scream from the throat in the vocal
Yeah.
cords, but like when you actually do it through the diaphragm, you get like a much like, kind of meatier growl to it, and you can, Like, it's scary, it's intimidating, it's crazy. And one thing I
Yeah.
wanted to say before we
Yeah.
shift further, Nathan, if you're watching this, how many different versions of Final Fantasy 7 are you gonna play, man? Like, he's always posted like, about Final Fantasy 7. I'm like, how many different versions of this game have they made? Like,
I think it's every year a new twist comes on it, or it's like the
it's
newest
so
version
crazy to me.
of that, yeah, or extended storyline or something like that. I literally have no idea about any of that. I'm the worst when it comes to like what the cool kids are into now, like with anime and like video games and stuff like that. Like
It's a great
I'm
game. Like,
I'll just defer to
I
being
put
like the old guy.
sure. I played it a bunch back in its heyday, like probably '97, whenever it was first released, and still can't believe they're getting mileage out of that. Not just the franchise, but that game specifically, and like those characters and whatnot. And it's crazy to me. I'm like, and I was like, didn't they re-release this years ago? Oh, there's a new version. Like, I can't keep up, you know.
It's interesting too because we talks about that Cloud Strife, the guy. I'm like, oh, that band's awesome. I just saw them last year. So yeah, that's my extent of it.
That's
When you say Strife, I
that's
think of the
great,
band.
man. And you guys hit the road here recently, and you've been doing that pretty consistently. How have those shows been going for you?
Really good. We had such a good time out with Heavy as the Head. If you have not heard them, please, I would definitely take some time to listen to Heavy as the Head. Um, we had a really great time. So we did 9 dates with them right at the end of January into the first week of February. Kind of hit all the way down the East Coast, started at Savannah, all the way down to South Florida, back up through the Panhandle, over into Mississippi, up to Atlanta eventually. So we kind of did that big run all the way down. But the good thing is we had so many good shows. Like South Florida, whoo, what a good time there. We played in Pompano Beach. That was really cool, just because I think that's where like Strong Arm and like Shia Luna are from. So, I
Yeah.
had the extra motivation of that. But honestly, we had some really good shows. 529 in Atlanta is such a great venue, and we had such a good show there with a band called Gut Check, if you and Clot, on top of Heavy as the Head, of course. But we had some really really good times. We also have spent a couple of those days with a band called Brain Burn. They're from like the Alabama Florida border. Really really cool guys, young guys, but they're doing some really cool stuff, including a Disembodied cover that they played every night, which made me very
Oh,
happy.
nice. Which one?
They should play Bloodshed Rain, and it's really good.
Oh, that song is awesome.
They did such a good job with that.
That song
I
is
was like, how do
amazing.
you
I
even
really
know
like
this?
that EP a lot. Yeah. Oh, they young band.
They're so young. They're real young.
Oh,
They're
wow.
like early
But you know
20s,
what? It's
early to mid
inspiring
20s.
to see a lot of these like younger bands go back and kind of look at the roots of what kind of came before them, and like that fucking album is amazing. Like
It's
that you know it, I think it's probably their best material, truthfully.
no doubt about it. And there was this place in Cleveland that they used to play all the time, Disembodied. It's called Speak in Tongues. But this place, I remember they played a show and they were so loud, Disembodied was, that the whole building started shaking. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I think it was like with Brothers Keeper and like Harvest and like bands like
Oh,
that.
wow.
So it was just an amazing bill anyway. But it was just one of those like moments where it's just like, this band is crazy. This band is going to be humongous. They're going to have some sort of lasting quality. And here we are again, 30 years later. And some like 22-year-olds are just like, this song is called Bloodshed Rain from
You
Disembodied.
surprised to hear
Please.
it?
They gave me the heads up on it. They gave
Oh,
me
okay.
they gave me like the old guy, hey, Disembodied, obviously. Yeah, we're gonna play a Disembodied song. I'm like, all right.
That's
And they
awesome.
killed it and they
That
did a
is
great job on top of the regular stuff, which is just incredible anyways. But it's good to see that bands are still out there, at least showing a little bit of love and respect to the OGs, at least
yeah.
OGs in our sense of mid to
Sure.
late 90s. We
Right.
got those guys
You
from
know,
the
I
80s that will always give us the like, well, Gnostic Front in 1982. I'm
right.
like, okay, well, dude, I was like 1 years old.
Leeway,
So what do you want?
Warzone, you weren't there. It's like, yeah, I know. It's like,
That was
sorry, I just was
There
born in
was
the wrong
one
year.
exactly. I was blessed enough to see Warzone one time. They did play in Cleveland one time before Ray passed away.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
like a show with them in the business, but it was like it was I got it probably within 6 months before he
Oh,
died. I
wow.
I don't want to speak out of school by saying that, but if I have to go back and remember correctly, but it was either I think it was in 1997 if I'm not mistaken. But they did play, and it was cool to see. And of course, he did the whole like getting in the crowd, like the whole like what Warzone is all about.
Yeah.
Bringing the music to you. So that was cool. So it's cool to see like bands like that. But most recently, I think last year I happened to see like Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, um, bands like that. And it's you got to respect the people that have been around for quite a period of time. So it was nice to it's nice to see that those bands are still making a difference and people are still into them for sure.
Yeah. I got to see Gorilla Biscuits not too long ago. They played in Southern California, and I mean, it was hype. It was like a I don't want to go so far as to call it like a stadium, but it was almost like an amphitheater, and like
Oh wow,
kids were setting it off, and it was
awesome.
amazing. And to kind of harken back to what we were talking about, like, oh yeah, you didn't live during this time period. I was actually advertising for this channel on a few of the hardcore like message boards, and I was like, yeah, I came up in the kind of the late '90s, early 2000s, so I'm kind of unfamiliar with a lot of these bands. I was like, I'm a bit of an old man, and they're like, yeah, but were you there for like the Dead Boys and stuff like this? You're just a
No,
baby. And I'm like, I'm
thanks.
25 years removed from a lot of the newer stuff that's coming out. I don't always hear about it. The point I'm trying to make is that it's been a minute for me, and like I'm a little out of touch as far as the newer bands are concerned. So if you could please, sir, like recommend me some good newer bands, or can't you because you're 10 years older than me? It's like,
Well, that's the thing too, and even being active in music and playing shows and things like that, I even feel like I'm out of the loop because there's new bands that are popping up all the time, and like some of the younger people are just like, oh, have you heard of so and so and so? And I'm like, no, like I haven't. I'm so sorry. Um, it's kind of
but
tough to
back in the
keep
day,
up.
a lot of those guys in the '80s were like, "Oh yeah, have you heard of Snapcase? Have you heard of Hatebreed?" And they're like, "Nah, man, like I have no idea."
Yeah, which is wild. But there are some cool bands out there. I think probably my favorite newer band is definitely Mind Force. They are unbelievable.
Heard of them?
I
What?
would take some time and check out like some of their live shows because I'm a sucker for like a character as a lead singer, and their singer is definitely a character. But he's
Okay.
just amazing, and they put on such a good show, and people go like absolutely crazy for them.
Like a band I got into, I know they've been around for a minute, was Year of the Knife. Like that
Yeah,
band's fucking sick. Like,
yeah,
and I would love to have the singer on the show, though I know she had some kind of
right.
health problem, or was she got in a wreck? That excuse me.
They did. Yeah.
And was kind of like incapacitated for a while, but when she's fully healed up, I'd
Yeah, I
love to have
think
her
I
on the
think
show.
they're yep back on the road to recovery from everything that I'm reading. I'm not that close to the band themselves, but we did have a chance to play with them, and I really enjoyed our time playing with them. They're unbelievable. So yeah, hopefully they'll be back up to speed. Hopefully soon, and you'll be able to maybe get them on the show. That would be really
Cool.
cool. But there's a lot of cool
Yeah.
bands out there. It's try to stay away from the hype train as much as possible and make your own decision. There's a lot of these bands. It's just like they'll pop up out of nowhere and it's like, yeah, they're the coolest, and you listen to them, you're like, that's terrible. Like you're awful. So I have to make sure that I do my due diligence too because it's no different than we were back in the day. Because well, it's actually there is a little bit of a difference. The one thing I do like more now is I can just like jump on Spotify and maybe check them out and be like, all right, this is cool. Instead of like you just play like CD roulette in the back of the Victory Records catalog where you would just send, you know, $30 in a self-addressed stamped envelope out there and just
Right.
send me like these because it's it sounds like they have the recommendation. It sounds like hate breed. It sounds like
Sure.
um
That yeah, that was like almost like kind of a crapshoot because like with a lot of those victory style albums and like only the strong compilations, it's like it would either be one thing, like they would be putting out the band's best material, and then you could listen to it like the full album and be like, oh, this wasn't even really that great. Or then they could put a song on there by another band that may not be so good, and you pass up on it, and then you end up listening to it later. You're like, oh damn, I hate that I slept on this band so long, like, and that was like pre Napster, pre all that stuff.
Yep.
And how do you feel? I always ask this question to musicians: how do you feel like with the accessibility of music, like on Spotify, YouTube Music? Do you think that almost kind of cheapens the art form a little bit? And like you and I would used to have to go to like a record store or something like that, or read the liner notes of the bands to be like, what bands do they think? If they sound like this band, then I might like this band. Like, how do you feel kind of about the easier access to a lot of music?
Yeah, it's funny you said the liner notes. That's a thing that doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately.
Ever.
But you're right. But thanks to, and then you like they shout out all these bands, and you're like, I gotta check them out if they're cool with, if they like them,
I
they got to be
remember
good.
hearing like seeing Will Haven thanked in so many albums,
Mhm.
and I was like, Will Haven, I keep seeing this band. I was like, I gotta check it out.
As far as accessibility, being a little bit older now, being in my 40s, I don't mind the convenience of being able to just jump on my phone and find whatever I'm looking for. Or, you know, say what you want about Spotify, and yeah, there's things that they need to clean up as far as paying their artists and things like that. I mean, that's a debate that can go on forever. But the good thing about it is you do get the recommendations of this band sounds like, or other similar artists, so you can kind of go down a rabbit hole if you wanted to, as opposed to going to a record store. But the good thing is a lot of people, there's so much, there's so many best way to say this, I guess, there's a lot of emphasis back on physical copies again, so people are going back to record stores and things like that trying to find out different bands. But I think technology has kind of moved into a place where we have this right at our fingertips, and then if we like it, then we can take the next step and move into the physical copy or whatever it happens to be. I don't have a problem with it. I never liked playing CD roulette or something like that, just trying to figure it out, because I had like a whole box full of CDs that were literally like I liked one song off of it. So I see the point in being able to have streaming services and things now. But I can see how someone like the older folks would be like, no, that's whack. You can't do that. You got to have it old school. It's got to be on cassette or 8-track or whatever, whatever
They started doing
ridiculous.
cassettes again. That is so weird to me. Like, I
Oh man,
understand vinyl, but cassettes?
let me
Like, what
tell
the
you.
fuck?
Let me tell you, man, we did a cassette. So
Oh,
one
did
of
you?
our yeah, Terminus came out on cassette. We had it on vinyl and cassette, and I'm telling you, people went crazy for that cassette. I don't know. I don't have a cassette player. These kids are
I
like
haven't had one in
they're like 19
years.
years old. You have a cassette player? Where are you getting it from? So I don't know if they're
Wha
hitting up like I don't know, like Goodwill to get one, or like
Yeah.
grandma's got one at the house, but they're finding.
Fisher
And
Price cassette player or something.
right, right, Fisher Price one.
I had
Remember the
one
Fisher
when I was
Price
a kid. It was
vinyl
like a
one? Yeah.
little small Fisher Price one.
I don't know
Teddy
how they're
Ruxpin, you could play it from a Teddy Ruxpin.
man, totally forgot, but that's right, because he had the cassette in the back. I don't know how they're playing it. Maybe they're collecting it. But I think everybody's first look is to kind of stream it first, see if you like it. I don't mind the try before you buy, to be quite honest.
Sure.
It's definitely helped me, especially as I've gotten older, and I think my musical tastes have kind of zeroed in on just a few type of styles of bands that I like,
Sure.
that allows me to kind of cut out the crap and be like, yeah, this is good, or this is terrible. I'm glad I didn't spend my money on that. So
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. And with the vinyl thing, uh as I've gotten older, I've tried to kind of declutter my life a little bit, and I mean, I love vinyl. I still have like a few vinyls, but like I sold a lot of them years ago, as it was for a benefit for somebody's father who was in the hospital, and I just donated all the money, and it was uh it was kind of freeing at the same time, because it was like, oh, now I don't have all this space that's taken up. And like, having lived in LA, it was like, okay, you got like a small studio apartment, you only got so much space to work with. And so, getting rid of a lot of, I don't want to say unnecessary, because I do have a lot of appreciation for, actually being able to have something tangible and see the physical art and what have you, but it is like, a good like feng shui to have like more open space in your room and your living areas and stuff like that. And so I don't, you know, would I ever start a vinyl collection again someday? If I had a little more, square footage to work with, but I don't, I'm kind of with you in the whole like, yeah, if it's on Spotify, if people are listening to it, so be it.
Yeah. And I still collect vinyl, not to the extent that I used to. It's really like, if an artist will put out like one of my, or like I'll go back in time to find like all of the classic albums that I've loved over the years and make sure that I have them on vinyl. But it's pretty tough for me to like run out and buy something new on vinyl, just because, like you said, of like the square footage issue. How often am I going to listen to it? Is it just going to sit in the packaging? Am I out there just to chase like a certain variant of an album or something
Sure.
like that? And like, who am I trying to impress ultimately? Like, what
Yeah.
am I going to show these off to my friends? People don't come by
Yeah.
my house. Like, I'm busy. I got things to do, man. Like, so I don't know why I'm doing it. So I really have to make a conscious decision to like, all right, is this necessary? Is this something that I actually need? Um,
Mhm.
is this something that has like, personal meaning to me? If not, then I really don't need to mess with it. And
Yeah.
if I do see the band, I would rather buy maybe a t-shirt, or if they had a tip jar, make sure that I took care of the band and maybe bought them gas or food or something like that, which I've been known to do in the past, just to make sure the bands are always taken care of. I think that
Sure.
goes a little bit further than, trying to be Mr. Cool Guy with the pink, you know, poo poo stain,
Splatter.
splatter vinyl variant
Yeah.
out of six, like who knows? Like I'd
Yeah.
rather I'd
Yeah.
rather do something meaningful than, try to
Well,
cool
I mean,
guy
if you
everybody
think
else.
about it, it is kind of an investment in that, a lot of those albums over the course of time become rare, and you could also turn around and just flip it and sell it. So, there's always that. I'm kind of with you though, on like, oh yeah, I'll buy a shirt. But now that I run a t-shirt company, like I have so many shirts, and like
Right.
I always want to buy a band shirt, but then I'm like, I don't know where I'm gonna put this.
I
Like I,
know.
I always have to like, even with Furia 5, I went and saw them here recently, and they're like, oh, if you buy this t-shirt, we'll throw in the hoodie for like half off, and I was like, don't do this to me. I was like, please don't do
That's a
this
good
to
move
me.
though.
Yeah, no, it was smart. And I mean, their merch is pretty sick, so I
It's
didn't
so
mind
good. I just
supporting
saw
them
some of
so
their
much.
just recent stuff. It looks really good. Yeah,
Have
it's
you
cool to
seen
see
them
that they're
lately?
doing stuff. I have not. I have not. I've not been in an area where they've played. So, but I
Man,
have heard all the new
so
stuff. I've
tight.
seen the video. They just dropped a new video. So, really, 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 I've always enjoyed their stuff over the years. So,
Yeah,
I'm just happy they're playing again
I think it's their newer stuff's probably the best stuff they've ever done. Like,
for sure.
songwriting wise, technicality, proficiency, like they've just got it like just watching them. I mean, they're a band that I feel like could be hate breed level just because they're like so good at what they do, and just it's all these like working parts that all just come together like so perfectly. And I was blown away. I thought they were fucking great. It was the first time ever seeing them too.
And they were pretty unique at the time, at least on Victory most part when the first albums came out. So, um, I think everybody was like didn't know what to do. They were probably scared of them, Stickman at least. Um,
Sure.
and I think the whole like violent edge of that really kind of made them where they're at. But at the same time, you can't find honestly better people out there. And as you've said, like over time, bands continue to grow, and here they are putting out literally some of their best stuff after such a long period of time. So really happy for them.
Right.
Seriously.
And I think I think you and I had this conversation too, where it was like you look at like the artwork in At War with the World, and it's like, they got the baseball bats and the
Yes,
fucking big
man.
dudes and shit, and you're just like,
Yes.
fuck, what is this?
Well,
Right.
sometimes I think you need to be a little bit scared every so often, and that's one of those bands that like you would show up if you, and that's going back at that time. If you didn't, if you hadn't heard anything, you're just showing up just to see what this is all about. This is some like big buff dude, with a with a baseball bat. What's going to happen at this show?
Yeah.
So you go with like that element of a little bit of trepidation going into the show itself, and then of course they kill it, and then everything is good at from that point on. But
And they're
yeah,
all like super nice dudes
I would
behind
be
the
really
scenes,
happy to see them again here soon at some point if they
Yeah.
come down
You
south.
should have made it up for that show they played with Madball. That was my first time ever seeing Madball too, and it was like,
Really,
it was hype, man. Like
talk about
I
pros.
yeah, yeah. Well, and like it's really great to seeing like all these bands that I never did get the opportunity to see back in the day still have some sort of longevity and be able to play for newer audiences.
And it's funny because we've played with Madball. Circle Back has played with Madball twice now, and both times I'm just completely floored about like it's one of those like what I said about Hatebreed before. It's like a perfect set every time. It's perfect transitions, song to song. They know what to do. If Freddie's going crazy, like he's got stamina for days. It's just so cool to see that those bands are still like doing like top tier level shows.
Somebody was commenting about Freddie too, saying now he looks like a hardcore version of Willie Nelson.
Oh boy, I don't know about that.
The hair and like, it
Yeah, I
just
guess, yeah. Well, you remember like his look for a long time, he had his hair, cropped close and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I think that just comes with age. He's just, just becoming himself. And they're
Yeah.
doing such a good job. Like they're always active, they're always busy. It's crazy to see that, after, so many years. And, if even to see that, especially shows that we play with them, even if they were like just flying into a location, they're still rolling around in a van or they're renting a van if they have
Yeah.
to. So
Yeah.
they're no different than you and me. It's with these bands that they really care about what they're doing and then taking
It's
the
so
time to go
weird
out there and live
simultaneously.
that life.
Well, and you think about it back in the day, they used to be on Roadrunner, and like that was one of the labels to be on, and like they were all over MTV and all this other stuff, and then it's like, I don't know if they had tour buses at the time, but like to see that they would still kind of uh duke it out and even in a smaller capacity, yeah, like you feel that sense of kinship with them because they're doing exactly what you do because they love doing it.
Yeah, and it just shows how much they care. And it's so cool to see. And they've been given a lot of opportunities and they've deserved and earned a lot of opportunities as well over the years, which has allowed them to have this success over this period of time. It's no different than them, Sick of It All, Hatebreed, those bands that have dedicated their life like, all right, we are going to be Agnostic Front, another one. We're going to be a hardcore band and this is what we're going to do. We're going to be the best at what we do and put out quality product every time, and we'll travel the world and enjoy our lives. That's what it is.
Wow. Yeah, no doubt, man. um I want to hear a little bit about like the most influential bands to you of
Okay.
any genre, truthfully.
Wow.
Most
All right.
influential bands,
Sure.
albums. I know Snapcase is a big one for you.
It is. Yeah, you're right. You know me. You know me well. So definitely Snapcase. Um, the number one band, though. So we'll just run down probably what three, like the top three that have probably
Three,
made the
sure.
most impact on my life. Number one probably would be Avail. Avail is would I would say if you ask me straight up who my favorite band of all time is, I would probably have to say Avail. So I've gone
Still
so
going
far.
too.
Correct. I've gone so far as to follow that band like they were the Grateful Dead, like from like
Seems to be
Florida.
kind of par for the course with a lot of people that are into Avail. Like they'll travel miles to go see him.
I think I did one time where I went from Florida all the way up to Cleveland and kind of just did all of the routing all the way up. That was to pick
Oh
up a
wow.
friend from Florida, but at the same time, like I think the whole point of just following a veil around was really cool. I think I got some handwritten directions this was like MapQuest time, but it was at the point where I think Bobo probably just wrote down like go here on 95 and get off at this exit. So we kind of
Yeah.
followed them around. That was cool, but um, I've always been into like I think my introduction to some other like hardcore bands were from like Lookout Records, like all those
Mm.
the punk bands on there. Um, So Avail was always special to me, since I was like 14 or 15 years old. Um,
Rosis was on Lookout Records.
they were. It's crazy.
Their
Yeah.
first two releases. It's crazy to
Totally
me.
different too. Very heavy out.
Yeah.
But yeah, but Avail for sure. Zayo, of course. I couldn't go without saying, how much that band has affected me. I think I've played with them at least over 30, 40 times in my life. I've seen the band play live easily over 100 times. So if it's a band that, I can, tell you anything and everything about, or bring back memories from shows of years gone by, it would definitely be Zayo and all the different iterations of Zayo as well, starting from what Eric Reeder all the way through till Dan and team now that are doing a real good job out there. But those two for sure, those are the real two big ones. And then outside of that, if it's like kind of like an indie band or something like that, I would say it's a tie from the Appleseed Cast and
Great
Branston
band.
from Cleveland.
Nice.
So that would be, my introduction into kind of like the, quote, emo world,
Yeah.
and indie rock world at the time. So they were both on Deep Elm and Deep Elm Records.
Whatever happened to Deep Elm?
They're still going. They're just putting stuff out like online. So like they run
Oh,
like a
okay.
nice little band camp. But I think they've had bands recently and pretty good. But if you're going back to me, it's like Pop Unknown, Branson, Appleseed Cast, a few of those bands, around at that time when Deep Elm was really kicking big time. But those ones are really like the three bands that like have, I can always go back to their catalog and never have a bad day if I'm listening to them.
Yeah. Planes Mistaken for Stars.
You got it.
Their
Yep.
old stuff.
Also
Yeah,
another one on
man.
there.
Then they went
Yeah.
on Relapse, which was so crazy to me.
But I think they changed their sound, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, I think within the past 5, 6 years, they played a show in Charleston, if I'm not mistaken.
Didn't one of them
Um,
die though?
yes, and this was before I think one of their members passed. And I think that was only a couple years ago, but I think this was
Yeah.
right before that, or maybe a year or so before that. I didn't have a chance to make it, but I think I did know a couple people that went, but they did play Charleston.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, man. That's. I mean, I like a lot of those bands too. Is Appleseed still playing?
They are, yeah. So I just saw them not too long ago, but they'll show up, kind of do, maybe run the festival scene, every so often. But gone out and most recently done some shows on their own. They did some stuff, if I'm not mistaken, with Sunny Day Real Estate maybe a year or two ago.
They're
So
back now too.
they're still active. They're still writing, and the good thing is I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard something about they are like writing hopefully a new album. I'm not exactly sure, but they're still just as good now as they were back in the day. Believe me, like it's unbelievable. They've added some keyboards and different, maybe electronic bits into it, not like being, electronic in that sense, but they've added a different dynamic to their show as well, and they're just incredible live. Just
Nice.
the mind of Chris Christie
Very
is
cool.
unbelievable.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, so what's a day in the life of you like? What do you do outside of the band? I mean, I know, but what do you
Yeah, I know you know.
what
I know you
tell
know.
the audience?
Yeah. So I spend most of my time, I work from home, work for a large cable company, where I oversee about 800 customer service associates that are located in Chandigarh, India. So I go over to India about 4 times a year, where I work with those teams, but I of course spend every day with them while I am in the States. So I love what I do. It's great. It keeps me busy. It allows me the flexibility to be able to travel on the company time, which is nice. But I do that, got the girlfriend's daughter that we hang out with, lives here, so we're a pretty happy little family. So things are good as far as that's concerned. But yeah, it's just work, the band, the home stuff, and then we have season tickets to the soccer team here, the Charleston Battery.
Oh, nice.
So that's really my big nights out, when we're going to all the matches and things like that, when there's not like a show or something going on.
And I've been to India, but what has your experience been being in India? Because it's like a whole nother world over there,
It
and
really it I totally agree. And the thing is too, I'm really I guess I'm really blessed to be going to a place in India where it's like super multicultural, to the point where Chandigarh is like northwest India, about a 4-hour drive from the Pakistan border. So it's a union territory, but it's right next to Punjab and Haryana. So right there, those two states. And the cool thing is you got a lot of like different influence there. So being where it is, being that it's right next to Punjab, it's like literally on the border of it. A lot of Sikh culture is there, then a lot of Hindu culture from the Haryana area and everything there. So it's really cool to get like the multicultural differences in how people like operate and work every day. So it's really really cool to see. So I really like having deep conversations when I go over there, and the people that I work with, including the client managers or my operations team when I go over there, we spend a lot of time outside of work, just really sitting back and talking about thoughts and feelings on life. And I ask a lot of stupid American questions about this, that, tell me about this, tell me about that. And um, I've learned a whole lot. So I really enjoy my time whenever I'm in India, just because I can sit back and learn a bunch of things and really have like true conversations with people that actually care and are not worried about being selfish or anything like that. It's really just awesome, good people outside of course, the work that we do there. When I go there, I have to work on East Coast time, US. So when I show up, I go in at like 6:30 p.m., work till like 3:30 in the morning. Then we come back, have some after work drinks, at the hotel where I stay at, and that's where these like deep conversations happen. So but I love going to India. I'll be going there 4 times this year, and I'm definitely looking forward to spending hopefully some additional time there, being able to go to like different temples and being able to see some of the cultural things that are out there as well, outside of to going to work, coming back, going to work, coming back, just because of the schedule I work when I'm over in India.
have you been sick in India yet?
Was I have not, man, and I hey,
Whoa!
I
Knock on
know,
wood.
yes. So of course, like it's all bottled water. Even the people I work with there, like their bottled water as well. They won't mess with anything going on in the out of the tap or anything like that. But even when it comes to food, um, I have some good people over there that will get things that from a like I'm not going to go like street food or anything like that because I'll know that'll
Oh
probably
no.
make me sick. So it's tried and true, like trusted places that meet certain sanitation levels that like an American would more than likely be comfortable with. Spice levels, things like that. You know, I think they tame it down a little bit for me, but I'm no stranger to spice.
Yeah, man. They don't like tipping over there either.
It's a
Like
whole
I
yeah.
tipped
So it's
somebody
like
over there.
it's a whole.
They're
You're
like, "What?"
right. It's a whole different thing. Like so, I was trying to like what's customary, what's not. So we're like going to a restaurant. Okay, we split things up. All right, do we tip? Do we not? At the hotel, though, it's more like where I stay is like a Marriott, like a subsidiary, like a Marriott. So they kind of understand that like some people that from the states may be staying there. So I tip the bell guy or something like that. Super grateful for it, but I don't think anything is expected at that point. And it comes back from like the colonial history of England, and I don't think I think all of the restaurant workers and things like that are paid a salary, if I'm not mistaken, and don't
Oh,
have to scrounge and save like the United States based people that make $3 an hour and have to live off tips. So I think
right.
everyone gets paid a wage, but just to be safe, I'll tip. I'm going to tip the people that do the room. I'm going to tip the guy at the thing, even if it's not customary. I just want to make sure I'm doing my part, helping everybody out. I got a cab. it's nice. Like I'm in a situation where they'll rent a they I have a cab for me. I have a car waiting for me like 24 hours a day, so I take care of that guy, at the end of the week. So I'm in a pretty good position as far as being able to get to where I need to go without any issues while I'm over there in India. But again, I'd like to spend more time and learn more things while I'm over there because I usually go over for like a week and I'm back.
Dude, I think I had dysentery when I was over there because I shit my guts out for like 2.5 months.
I'm
And
telling
it
you
was
that I am, knock on wood, one of the few people that has not gotten like deathly ill who has gone
Oh,
over
it
there.
was fucking awful, man. And
Yep.
everybody was like, "Oh man, I love India." And I was like, I probably would have liked it if I wasn't ill. But apparently, you can go to like a pharmacist there and they'll give you something that will clear it up like right away. Like when I got to the States, I was still sick. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, and ended up going to uh just a normal, I think, family doctor or something. They gave me something and I was better right away. And they're like, "Oh, you could have done that in India." And I was like, hindsight's always
Cool to know
2020,
now.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, next time I go, I'll be sure to take it. But that's
Yeah,
awesome, man. Have you ever
you
had any
definitely
like
need to go back.
yeah, have you ever had any like crazy experiences there? Cuz like, you'll see like 20 people riding on top of a bus or something like that.
It is driving there. I couldn't even imagine. I asked the one guy that I'm always with there. I'm like, "How do you drive here?" It's
It's insane.
literally crazy. He's like,
Yeah.
"No, there's a system behind it." Because everyone's like beeping at each other, but it's not like an FU beep or anything like that. They're doing it
Yeah.
because I'm here, beep beep, I'm here, or beep beep, I'm
Yeah.
moving. You know, it's like controlled chaos. But you're right.
Yes.
There's like first there's like people on bikes, then people on mopeds, then people on motorcycles, then in cars, then in like motorized, like kind of like rickshaw things. Then there's like cabs, then there's like nice cars, and you're all trying to like converge together, get around these streets. And oh, yeah, there may or may not be a cow in the middle of the street as well, which got to make sure that the cow moves off to the side or is smart
Yeah.
enough to stay on the side of the road. Dogs in the street, complete and utter chaos. You're driving on the other side of the road, for us, and you're just trying to put everything together. And it's like, I remember the first time I was coming from the airport to my hotel, I was like, oh, I'm going to die. This is where I die. This is what happens. This is what my destiny is going to be. I'm going to get into an
Uh,
accident in India. That's going to be it for me. But
yeah.
it is like this crazy controlled chaos driving that I've never seen anything like it. I
That's
promise you,
insane.
no American person, period, could drive there. Not one.
No.
That would
Yeah.
be able to drive as aggressively as you have to. Like driving aggressive is being safe there. And that's like a total different mindset. And all of like flashing lights at night or beeping the horn during the day to let people know where you're at. It's like this like crazy chaotic like masterpiece. It's like happening right in front of you. So it's wild and crazy, people all over the place, but
Yeah.
it's just the life that people live, and it's totally normal. Totally normal for
So
everybody there.
weird, man. I had, two pretty interesting experiences there. Yeah, like you said, it can be like a 6-lane highway that will all of a sudden converge into like one lane, and you're just like,
Yep.
the people are just, and you're
Yep.
like, what the fuck is this? I
It's
thought I was gonna die
crazy.
there a few times. Yeah, and then another time I was walking into the temple grounds, and there was a fountain, like a water fountain in the middle. All of a sudden, it was at night. I was surrounded by a pack of wild dogs.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm about to get fucked up. I was like, and my first instinct was just to go to high ground. So I ran over to the fountain and I ran up to the very top, like the spire of the fountain. And I'm like, okay, you're not going to be able to get me up here. One of the dogs jumped right on top of the fountain and landed right next to me. And I was like, oh shit, and fortunately they were actually docile. I was just
Yeah.
really intimidated by just the sheer numbers of them, because I was like, oh, I'm going to get torn to fucking pieces here, but
It's
like he just got up and just kind of like sat next to me. And I was like,
it's funny you said that
God.
because you're right. Depending on where you're at, I think it's not an issue. It's just a way of life there.
Yeah.
There are wild dogs everywhere. It's funny you said that. The minute I got out of the airport, the first time I was there, it's like five dogs just like sitting there by the door, just like hanging out, just sitting down. I'll get to my hotel. There's dogs walking up and down the street. They all seem to be in relatively good health from what I can see. I'm sure, not up to date on any type of, medicine or shots or anything like that. Who knows? But um, it's just part of the way it is. Now, I did ask, my guys over there, I'm like, hey, does anyone get bit by these dogs? They're like, yeah, there's some of them. They're kind of crazy that'll come out and bite you if you
Oh,
mess with them. But he said for the most part, they kind of just do their own thing. They're
yeah.
kind of like just off where they need to be. It's no different than like maybe, like the wild cows that are just around on the streets on the side of the road. That unfortunately, from what I can see, sometimes just sit around and eat garbage, which is kind of gross. But it's just the way it is over there.
It's wild, man.
It's different. It's completely different. I love it though. I love it.
My knowledge of India was limited to Indiana Jones and the Temple of
Right.
Doom before I went over there. And I remember asking some of my friends, I'm like, do they really eat like monkey brains and like bugs over there? And like apparently that was a really inaccurate description of
Totally.
India, and which is why they had to film it in Sri Lanka. So we got a question here actually. Ramon says, how's the coffee there?
Coffee is not as good as I thought it was going to be. I was very, very upset about the level of quality of coffee. So I don't mind a good coffee. I'm Italian. I like a good cappuccino if I can. But regular coffee, I'll just sit and drink like a black coffee. There is like a big, like a real big, like instant coffee scene there. I don't know why. It's really like what's available. So,
Okay.
short of going to like any like local coffee shops, which unfortunately are closed when I'm awake while I'm there, um, and then what I can get at the hotel, it's like a lot of instant coffee, and it is not as good as you think it's going to be. So it's a good question. You think it would be like, okay, it's pretty close to like Middle East. You might have some like nice Turkish coffee or something like that. Not, at least not where I'm at. I'm sure somewhere there's probably really good coffee, but just not by me.
Have you ever traveled with Western women there, or do you typically travel by yourself?
I've usually traveled by myself when I go. I've been lucky enough to be able to at least just support that one site there, so I don't have to go to multiple sites in India like some of the other people I work with do. Just because I have so many people that work at that one area. But there have been a couple times where, and we have a lot of Western women that do go, that are vendor managers that go over to India quite frequently, on a quarterly basis, like I do. Um, no real issues. I think more of the issue that we've run across sometimes could be more in Egypt, because we have some business over there, than really in India. I don't think there's really. I think everyone's relatively okay with that as long as you're being respectful. It's recommended. For I'll have these conversations with people sometimes, like, hey, if you're going to go over, it's probably recommended maybe wear some long pants, long sleeve, something light, nothing like too over the top. But then
Yeah.
again, it's not like the women in India are like dressed traditionally every day and things like that. That's not really the case. Everybody's like, they got like t-shirt or like a nice shirt, like really like relative like Western styled wear, especially the younger people.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because I did witness it firsthand. My god sister from Spain, we were walking through one of the bazaars in Vrindavan, which is one of the holy cities there,
Yep.
and dudes groping her ass, fucking grabbing her and shit
Really?
like that. And I almost had to beat the fuck out of some people
Yeah.
because I was like, you're not gonna fucking do. I was like, stop. I said, you better stop right now, and you better just walk the other direction, or I'm gonna
Holy
fucking whip
shit.
your
All right.
ass. Yeah, it was bad. And I mean, she was even fighting him too. Like she was
Yeah.
like I'll fuck you up, like. And I couldn't
Maybe.
believe that because
Yeah.
I guess it's just they kind of view Western women as just like very promiscuous and easy, and I'm like, You guys are barking up the wrong
Yeah,
tree here, you know?
see, that's the unfortunate. That has not been my experience, thank goodness. Um, I'm sorry that that happened. That's obviously not good anytime, anywhere with any person. But I haven't been in that situation, or anybody that I've worked with been in that situation has been a
It's
female.
good.
But I can only imagine what that would be. And you had every right to be like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
stop this. Like, this
yeah.
is not cool. No matter who you are and where you're from." So, yeah, I just no one needs to be harassed ever, and it just sucks that you had to you had to step in, and she felt uncomfortable in that situation, because
It's like,
that's not the experience in India that I've had, or with
that's
anybody
good.
any female that I know there.
But you've been to Egypt too.
I have not. No, I've been
Oh,
I've had business prior to that in Honduras. We have somebody else that handles our work in Egypt. Um, so I haven't been over. I don't have those groups over there, but Honduras is awesome. I really enjoyed my time over there. Talking about good coffee, that's where the coffee was. Honduras, they don't mess around.
I
Um,
don't doubt it.
but and then the Philippines, which I moved to a different part of our business before I ended up going to the Philippines. So that would have been a nice place to go to too. And I hope one day to eventually get over there, because my parents used to live there for a period of time.
What do you do when you're not working and doing the band?
Short of like working, going to like the soccer matches, I just kind of hang out, watch a little bit of TV. I was thinking about some of the, like what I've been watching recently, is kind of you kind of you alluded to it earlier in our conversation. I I really haven't gone out and like seen many movies recently or anything like that. I'm more of like a series guy. So
Everybody seems to be lately.
yeah, and I really come back to spending some more time with two shows like Suits and then Billions, just for the
Okay.
fact that I think both of those shows are like wonderfully acted. Where you feel like you're like you disappear into, like, you cross the line of like, is this real or not? Like,
Yeah.
where you really dive into that. So especially like Paul Giamatti in Billions, like he's just unbelievable.
Oh, he's great.
So, you know, and going back in time, like he's always been one of my favorite actors. Going back to this like semi indie movie from like the late '90s called Safe Men, that
I
he
haven't seen
was
that.
in. So that's like, I've always been, his like number one fan. But being able to see that and spend some time doing that outside of like things that kind of like Miranda's into, like watching some reality shows if she has something on. I actually kind of like the show Traders a little bit. That's definitely an interesting one on Peacock. And seeing like all the drama behind that, and some of the mind games that these people have on each other is definitely kind of cool. But really the TV stuff, working extremely hard, going to the soccer matches when available, and then spending as much time at home with the fam. I think that's really it. Outside of like the band stuff, which obviously takes up a ton of time as well. So I'm trying to
Are
manage
you a reader?
everything, and I'm not. I'm not.
Yeah.
Though I did get a really good book last time I was in India, as a matter of fact. It's called Walking with Nanak, and it kind of goes through the life of Guru Nanak, the guy that kind of started Sikhism. So this kind of goes through his life a little bit from like a historical perspective. A friend of mine there gave it to me. He's like, hey, not pressuring you or anything, but it would just be cool. Like, you want to learn more about some of the culture and things like that, specifically in this area. This would be a good read, just so you have a better idea of kind of what happens over here. So I do have that. That is on my list. Literally the next thing. If I'm pulling out a book, I'm pulling out that book.
I know little to nothing about Sikhism. I
Yeah,
know
same.
I know how to point them out though when they have the little
Right.
gold like wristband and stuff. I'm like, oh, you're a Sikh, aren't you? And he was
Hmm.
like, oh, how did you know? And I'm like, that's the band, man. You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of things behind it. I mean, it's definitely interesting. There's a lot of what sets that group of people apart is the belief in one God, And then at that point, that separates from Hinduism, at least from like the fundamental standpoint of it. But a lot of that stems back to there's such a rich history that goes so far back into like the Mughals and all of the plight of the people in that area, and even to like the partition in India, and all the things that happened post that time. There's a lot of really really cool stuff, but it's definitely, there's a large population of Sikh people in the area that I go to. So I'd like to learn more, and I have been learning a lot more, than been spending some time doing a lot of research, not only into that but also into Hinduism as well, of course, which is the main religion in the area. That's number
And
one.
I
Then
think the
then
common
two.
misconception is that India is mostly like Hindu oriented, which there's Sikhs, there's Jains, there's a huge
Yep,
Muslim populace, there's
very much so. Yep,
Buddhist, there's some Christians there,
very much
mostly
so.
Catholic, I think. Yeah.
And it's interesting because that's the biggest thing. You like, if you were uneducated going into that situation, you think, well, everybody is subscribes to some form or facet of Hinduism, at least the mindset of it. Because as
Right.
I've learned, it is not a religion; it is more of a mindset, and there's so many things
It's actually
behind
a
it.
geographical notation,
Right.
because the Muslims, whenever they came to India, um, they would always call the people east of the river Sindhu, or east of the river Sind, they would call them Sindhus. And I guess because they couldn't pronounce the S, they called them Hindus. And so that would be like if uh, you called people that were Christians Americans,
Hmm.
like basing it geographically on, okay, you've got Protestants, you've got Catholics, you've got Baptists, you've got all this, lumping them into one whole like um, subset of people based on where they're located. So that was always interesting to me. Like the Hinduism's a misnomer in that it's
Right.
not a religious practice. It's where they're located.
Right. And again, it's kind of like the mindset behind it and everything. But yeah, going back to even the word India itself stems really back from what that conversation you're saying, the Indus Valley civilization and all of that, and how over time and future conquerors of the area kind of changed the way that everything is spelled, and no different than it is in the rest of the world. But here we are now. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how multicultural it is there. We drove past like a Catholic school there, in the area where I go. And then of course there was like a Jain temple, there was Krishna temple, there was of course uh, a Gudra for six, all the stuff over there, like everything. So it's like super multicultural, but everyone's like cool enough to be able to answer any questions that you have, be able to tell you differences, and make you feel that you're not like so much of an outsider if you do
Mhm.
ask, because I think people appreciate you taking the time to better understand who they are. Like you said, like Sikhism is probably one of the top 5 or 7 religions in the world, but a lot of people don't know about it. They just know how to potentially identify someone who is based on the head
Yeah.
covering, or one of the 5Ks, which like you said is the the bracelet, which I guess symbolizes the cycle of life.
Yeah. No doubt, no doubt. Is there anyone you want to shout out real quick?
Yeah. Well, just want to shout out like everybody and circle back, to be quite honest. I wouldn't be here, wouldn't be having this conversation with you, outside of our friendship, of course, without all the work that they do every day to make, the band continue on after all these years. It's super important to me, how much, and I'll never take for granted like all the work that they do, just practicing at home alone, and putting the songs together, and being comfortable enough to say what works and what doesn't. I mean, that it's one of those things that like we talked about before, is the reason why we've been around so long. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, they're of course number one when it comes to being having the opportunity to be on podcasts and things like this. And again, to you, I appreciate you having me on again. I look down the list of all the people that come on this show, and I don't quite fit in, but I'm happy that I'm here. Um, you
Man,
know,
you've been around forever. You're doing great things. You absolutely fit in. And I thank you. I always thank you pretty frequently for letting me crash at your place when I was trying to
yeah,
get into Screen Actors
absolutely.
Guild. So that meant a lot to me, And so yeah, what better to have a friend on here, just to kind of chop it up and talk about music and talk about your endeavors and stuff,
and
So
that's
I
and
think
that's the
that's
thing,
great.
being able to spend time is, in any capacity with you is really special to me. So thank you again. I'm so happy to see, all the things that you're doing, especially with both clothing lines that you have that I can
Yeah, man.
see. And then also, I had a chance to listen to, what was that, your vocal demo reel, which
Oh
sounds
yeah.
great. You sound great. I hope you
Thanks, man.
pursue
Yeah.
something on that. I really do. You sound awesome. So
Thank you, man.
I don't mean to
Appreciate
gas
that.
you up
Yeah.
like crazy, but I really,
I
really.
finally did join the union, so I'm trying to get in on the vocal acting side of things and do commercials, and I would love to do. I got to put together a video game reel or like an anime
Okay.
reel because they were auditioning for that down in Atlanta, and I was like, oh fuck, I don't have this yet, So like to be able to do like Call of Duty type stuff, enemy recon plane incoming, like
Perfect.
that to me
Yep.
would be fun as shit, So. But dude, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and you're always welcome back anytime,
Thank you.
man. I've been starting to kind of bring a lot of the guests that have come on in the past, kind of revisit where they're at and what they're doing and stuff, So definitely in the future, you will definitely be back on the show. I think it'll be great. When are you guys playing again? Where can somebody see you?
So we're kind of going through a member change right now in the band. So we have like a temporary person that's going to be helping us out. So we're kind of holding off on some shows right now. We do have something that will be announced here soon in May. That'll be in Savannah, Georgia. July, in South Carolina. That we have a little bit of preliminary talks around a pretty cool show that's going to be happening in July in South Carolina. And then one for sure that we can announce big time is August 9th. We'll definitely be playing in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. That's where my dad is from.
Cool.
At the Upstage Music Fest in Clearfield, Pennsylvania with Green Jelly.
Oh wow. They
How
they
cool is that?
were I think they got well, they were kinda gone for a while, and I just heard they started
They
kinda
just
playing
came
again, yeah.
back. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is
The
wild to
bear
me. I
went
think
over the
one of
mountain.
the first quote heavy songs I ever heard was Three Little Pigs. So it's just one of those, like, it'll be like a surreal moment. But the guy was nice enough to reach out to me. Shout out David, from Upstage Music Fest. They've been doing it the past couple of years. I think they had Life of Agony last year, Sick of It All.
Oh, wow.
So it's a pretty good fest. It's like smack dab in the middle of Pennsylvania.
That's sick.
Again, I think personal meaning to me is it's the town where my dad is from. So,
Is he
so
gonna go
that
to the show?
I doubt it. I doubt it. He lives in Cleveland, and
Oh, okay.
I don't think he would go all the way out there. But it's his hometown, and my grandparents, of course, had a house there and things like that. So, and they've both
That's awesome.
obviously passed on. But it would just be cool to like go back to that town, which I haven't been to in 25 years, more than that, probably 35 years. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm stoked
I'm
for
sure
that.
that'll be
But
great.
once we kind of lock down, the temporary, or fill in member, hopefully potentially full time member, then we should be, pulling on more shows as we go along. But it's a matter of getting this person up to speed, ready to go. And once they are, then if their schedule allows it, then we'll be able to do much more things. So we're just kind of waiting on that right now, but plenty of things in the works, including new music. Nathan, of course, as you mentioned, has about 1,000 songs ready to go for us. So, a
Nice.
matter of writing some lyrics to it and getting some things locked down in the studio with Jamie King is probably our next order of business. So, hopefully, that'll be either an extended EP or hopefully a full length for us.
Cool. I'll be looking forward to it, man. That's awesome. Now, one thing I want to do before I go, as you can see by the banner there, I promote my merchandising company called Hell's Heart Merch Co. You can go to the web link at hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. I'm going to throw some of the samples up here real quick. We got the Black Flag mock right here. We got Steve McQueen from Bullet. You got Psycho 2, Norman Bates. Tatum from Scream 2. This is a glow in the dark one. I love this shirt. It's so fun to just walk into the bathroom and just turn out all the lights and see it glow. It's fun. Same with this Randy one. It's also a glow in the dark from Scream 2. So be sure to check that out. And I will be sure to post all your links down here in the comments so that people can find your music and find you guys on social media. And everybody, just like, comment, share, subscribe, click on the bell for notifications. We got some pretty big shows coming up in the week. Well, next few months, actually. So tune in. And again, I want to thank John Marino for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, brother. You're actually one of my favorite people. So
Thank
it's a
you so
really
much.
blessed opportunity to have you. Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Namaste. Jobless. Be good.